This weekend, Ted Cruz got into it with John McCain. He went forth, both barrels blazing, but the Maverick wasn't having it. It had to do with the rights of service members to use their guns with concealed carry on military bases. And so Sunday, Ted Cruz said that he's pressing Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman John McCain to hold hearings on whether soldiers should be allowed to carry their own concealed firearms onto military bases. There not being clearly enough guns on military bases. He says, I'm very concerned about that policy. He says, I think it's very important to have a public discussion about why we're denying our soldiers the ability to exercise their Second Amendment rights, implying there that the Armed Services Committee is denying that, and thus John McCain, as the head of that committee, is denying that. So John McCain, of course, responded saying, you know, I was fascinated to hear that because I haven't heard a thing from him, nor has my staff heard from his staff. Where did that come from? I have not a clue. I'd be glad to discuss the issue and see if we need a hearing, but it came as a complete surprise to me that he has been pressing me. And he went on to say, maybe it was through some medium that I'm not familiar with, maybe bouncing it off the ozone layer for all I know. But there's a lot of holes in the ozone layer, so maybe it wasn't the ozone layer. Maybe it was through hand telegraph, maybe through sign language. I don't know. I don't know if Ted Cruz knows sign language. I don't know how he thinks he communicated that to John McCain, but John McCain not appreciating it.
Not having any of it. And I suspect it sounds from the way that McCain's talking that there's not particularly a whole lot of love lost between him and Senator Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. I mean, he's all mavericky and stuff, but you know.
He's quite mavericky.
What really shocked me about this is the idea that because you're a soldier on a military base and you're not allowed to carry a personal concealed weapon, that somehow this place that houses all these guns locked safely away, that is somehow not allowing them to exercise their Second Amendment rights. And I'm also shocked by Ted Cruz because he even admits in most of these articles, he says the military brass opposes this.
But what do they know?
Yeah, what do they know about, you know, the military and people being, you know, with guns on military bases? You know, he's like, oh, we ought to hear their arguments. He's such a big defender that he'd actually be willing to ignore what the military brass, the generals, say is actually secure and a way to, you know, it's security and safety on a base, you know?
Yeah, I think that Ted Cruz here is relying on his experience as a former war hero. We have a little bit of that footage. Why don't we roll the footage of him as a war hero?
Wait, that's right.
Nothing, sorry. It's just, and look, John McCain, of course, is not going to like a guy running for the Republican nomination for the presidency, basically implying that he doesn't give a fuck about the Second Amendment rights, specifically of soldiers specifically. Those are two things you don't want to be insulted on if you're a Republican politician, so he didn't appreciate that. Now, we do have a sort of backtracking by Ted Cruz. Let's run that footage.
Oh, I like John McCain. He's always voluble. He can always be counted on for a good quote. Listen, the question of concealed carry on military bases is an issue I've raised repeatedly. I've raised it at open hearings of the Senate Armed Services Committee, hearings where John McCain was, I believe, present at those hearings. I will acknowledge I may have misspoken in New Hampshire when I said that I've been pressing John McCain and that what I have been pressing is the Armed Services Committee, and John McCain is the new chairman of it. And so I had sent a letter to the previous chairman, but I had not communicated that to John directly, although I had at a hearing, and will continue to raise it with John McCain.
Okay, so just because you raise the idea and then, you know, the folks that actually run the bases say, no, thank you, that's really actually not a good idea, so please don't do that. And then you continue to raise it. I mean, isn't that supposed to be the definition of insanity? You keep trying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, and if I was John McCain, I would take issue with the first sentence in that video. Like, oh, you can always count on him for a quote. That crazy old codger. I don't think I'd like that either. Now, of course, some element of this is the fact that we in the media, we want to see these little catfights, a little scratching from Republican to Republican, and that is totally true. I do want to see it, but you can't just throw accusations around about John McCain, who I don't think he deserves much of the respect he has when it comes to the military, considering some of the policies he's pushed for, some of the wars he's pushed for. But if you're a Republican, he does have that respect, and so you need to be a little bit more careful, especially when you're Ted Cruz, a man who I don't think anyone associates you with strength or knowledge or experience in the military. Yes, he is in the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, but just the very idea that he genuinely cares about whether or not they can carry these guns. Do you think in his off time he's firing shotguns into the air? It seems like a very bald-faced, transparent political move to endear himself to lobbying groups like the NRA.